Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, and welcome back. Welcome back to PorscheCooled. My name is Michael Barth, and this is Owner Stories. Owner Stories number 79. If you haven't been here before, welcome. If you have, welcome back. What is Owner Stories? Owner Stories is the podcast where I chat about Porsches. I chat about Porsches with people around the world, just normal owners like me. I've got a 997 Carrera if you haven't been here before. Owners who like dreaming about Porsches, owners who have dreamt about Porsches for a long time and maybe now have 4 or 5, people who are just getting into it for the first time with a 996 or a 997 or a Boxster, 2.5, Boxster 986, or a Cayman. It's all about the ownership journey. It's all about the story. And as I always said, and I used to say it in the very, very beginning of these PorscheCooled Owner Stories, and this is how I kind of came about the idea of this podcast. I said each Porsche tells a different story and each owner has a story to tell. And that's basically what Owner Stories of the PorscheCooled Podcast is all about. Anyway, number 79 today. I'm going to be joined very, very shortly by Tyler. Tyler's coming in from Minneapolis in the USA. You would have seen by the title, Tyler's got a couple of Porsches. We'll chat about that when we get Tyler connected through Zoom. All of the owner stories, they're done through Zoom. It's the best way to do it, and most of the times it works out pretty well. Sometimes I know the sound is a little bit dodgy, but in general the sound is pretty good the way that I record it. Anyway, for those of you who are wondering, this is number 79. I'm recording these a little bit in advance. You would probably know that. Sometimes I give it away during the conversation, but I am recording them a few weeks in advance. It just makes it easier for me to keep giving you these owner stories every week. And to just keep on top of it. Otherwise, if I'm doing them week by week, which I kind of was doing for a while there, I was doing them, the week before I'd record someone for the following week's owner stories. It's a little bit hard because if anything happens, as in my work gets crazy, I get sick, which I have been feeling quite sick the last week, I have to cancel or reschedule, and it's sort of all out of whack. So recorded quite a few in advance actually, but just so that you guys can always have your owner stories every Tuesday. And that's about it. It's almost 4 o'clock here in London, 4 o'clock on a Tuesday. I'm going to get Zoom fired up and I'm going to get Tyler from Minneapolis in the USA and start talking about his PorscheCooled owner story. Okay, welcome back everyone. Welcome back to Owner Stories. And as I said before, it's number 79. And I am joined now by Tyler. Tyler's coming in from Minneapolis, right? Minnesota.
That's correct, yeah.
Minneapolis. I always get confused between the two. Why is that? That's a weird Australian thing, isn't it? I always get confused between the two. I know I've had someone on before who's come from that region as well.
Yeah, probably James, the auto amateur. I'll probably give him a shout out and a recommend for other people to follow him on Instagram. But he's in the area as well. And, Minneapolis and Minnesota, pretty similar start to the words. But yeah, I'm in Minneapolis.
Fantastic. So I just want to tell the listeners, big congratulations to Tyler as well. He's just become a dad. He's had a little baby girl, so congratulations, Tyler.
Yes, thank you, Michael. Appreciate it.
So Tyler and I have been chatting over Instagram, been trying to hook up this owner stories for a little while, and it's going to be a good one. Tyler, as you will know, has probably 2 of my favorite cars. I think 2 of my favorite cars, and it's a really good, as I was saying to Tyler before we started, a really good combination of Porsches to own at a reasonable price in some countries. But we'll get into that.
Yep.
But before we get there, Tyler, let's just start at the first question, the first bit of the conversation. When did it all begin for you? When did you first start noticing Porsche? Did you have, Hot Wheels cars, Matchbox cars? Did you have, did someone in the street own a 911? When did you start noticing them and think, maybe one day I can get one of those?
Yeah, so my affiliation with Porsche really didn't start until recently, but my interest in sports cars started when I was younger. My dad got, you'll probably laugh at this, Michael, saying this is a sports car is a bit of a stretch, but he got a 2003 Chevy Cavalier, brand new, red. It had shiny chrome rims and the premium sound package, and I was like blown away by this car at the time. I thought it was like the coolest thing. It maybe looked a little bit like a Porsche 944. And he would bring it home after work and I would grab my CDs and I would just sit in the car and, throw on my CDs and listen to that. And, he taught me how to drive stick on that car. when I became of age, and I absolutely loved that car. So that was like the first sports car that I saw, two-door, and just loved it. So I've always been driving stick, and I've really appreciated that, but I didn't really notice Porsche specifically maybe until like 2018, to be honest with you. Not a lot of people in my neighborhood growing up had one. I can't think of a friend's dad, or anybody like that I saw with them, but I was on a business trip in Arizona, and we were staying at a pretty nice hotel, and there was maybe like a 1987 Porsche 911, guards red, looked beautiful. And there was also a Lamborghini next to it. And I only took a picture of the Porsche, and I sent it to my wife, and I said, wow, look how awesome this is. So I don't know. I've always liked the lines. I've always liked, the iconic shape and everything like that. And, that's when I first kind of noticed it. And I went to an auction with my father-in-law, maybe in 2019, and I saw a Miata go for like $4,000, and it only had like 60,000 miles, and it was in perfect condition. And I was like, wow, you can get a nice, fun convertible for that little money. And that kind of started to, get the gears turning a little bit for me. Like, I'm like, hey, you know what? I'm not going to buy a camper, or I'm not going to, get like jet skis. I'm not going to get any of those toys. Like, maybe this is something I'm interested in. And I really miss driving stick, because I did buy the family responsible vehicle, a four-door Honda Civic to put the baby seat in. And, I did end up selling that, and we'll get into that later on in the story. I sure did. But so see, that's kind of how I started it.
Yeah, okay. Let's just, sorry, Tyler. The Miata, you know what I mean? And I don't know what the prices are in the US, but the Miata, which is the MX-5 in Australia and UK, isn't it? I don't know whether it's called the MX-5 in UK or Miata, but Miata MX-5. Great little car. Steve had one, back in the day. Is Miatas around the same price as, say, a very high mileage Boxster in the US, or is it a different level again?
Yeah, so they can be cheaper, I would say. I mean, with the car market going how it is, they've definitely crept up. But when I was starting to look, I was looking for the Miatas, and every time that I saw one that I was maybe interested in, it was a little bit higher than I wanted to spend at the time. And I was like, you know what? Like, this is starting to creep up into the Porsche territory. So let me just check it out. And, I found an example, and we'll get into that maybe later on down the road, or if you want me to introduce it early, let me know.
Okay, so that was 2018. You said you first started noticing Porsche. So you're sort of thinking about Miatas. You're thinking about other types of sports cars. Were there any other cars after that point? Or you've got the family car, you got the Civic, and then a few years back. So what did anything else happen, or you started searching for that first Porsche?
Yeah, so basically my car journey was that Cavalier that I mentioned at the jump. My dad handed that off to me. I eventually went into a 2010 Chevy Cobalt, and then I got in an accident, and then got that Civic that I mentioned. And that Civic, when we were starting to look, my wife and I was like, okay, I really want a two-door, and I really want to drive stick. And I ended up with an automatic four-door, and so I wasn't really super thrilled with anything, that I had gotten. It was a great car, don't get me wrong. Like, it got 40 miles to the gallon, super safe, really reliable. It was great. But I always was just missing that feeling of driving stick and just having that level of control and fun within a car.
And I think there's quite a big difference between a four-door Civic and a two-door Civic, isn't there? Is it just in the doors,
so, yeah.
Or it's something else, right? There's something else that's different, I think, from memory. I can't remember. Okay. So you wanted stick. You've got the Civic. It's auto. So you've got the Civic. What happens then? What do you start thinking? Are you thinking I'm going to upgrade the Civic? I'm going to get something a little bit better, or do you think I'm going to get something fun on the side?
Yeah, I was thinking I was going to get something fun on the side, and the reason for that is we moved into a new house, and it had a 3-stall garage as opposed to 2, which our prior house had.
Yep.
And, I'm looking at it, and I'm talking to my wife, and I'm like, it's really wasteful to just have this extra stall here, empty. Like, what are we doing? And, having looked at those prices, the affordability of, a fun car on the side was certainly within reach. And, that prompted the search, and I got pretty serious about looking into that search. And this was basically at the start of COVID, when they started issuing, I forget what those checks were called, but, you're getting a little bit of a boost from the government for support and everything like that.
Yep.
And, that was an extra nudge in the direction of taking a look at that car and getting it in the garage, actually.
So I've had a bit of a trend recently on owner stories, and you probably picked up on it as well, that a lot of people have bought cars during COVID, right? We know that's happened. We know the prices of cars have gone crazy. The prices of Porsches have gone insane. The prices of everything have gone insane, JDM cars, everything. So what do you start looking for? So you're it's what, 2020? We're in 2020 and you start searching.
Yep.
So what do you start searching for? Are there local dealers nearby where you can go and look at, Porsches, or do you start looking online, bring a trailer? How do you start going about it, Tyler?
Yeah, so I was really trying to find something locally. And like I mentioned, it was more in the Miata range. So I was on Facebook and Craigslist and those things. And like I said, those prices were just a little bit more for those cars than I felt like I wanted to pay for what I was looking for, which was essentially an introduction into, this fun car world. At a price point that was manageable and just to try it out, right? Like if I didn't like it or, it wasn't what I thought, I didn't want to take a big risk about it. And so as those prices got closer to the Porsche world, I just said, let me just type in Porsche and let me see. And I did that on Craigslist. I found an ad, that had maybe been posted about a month ago. It was approaching the top end of my budget, but it was within the budget. And I downloaded a couple apps on my phone, like Car Gurus or Cars.com. And I searched basically nationwide. And I said, wow, for the mileage in a manual in a non-silver or, in a color that I really appreciate, this one 20 minutes down the road is like the best available at this time. And that's how I found it.
So what was the range then when you were looking? Not the price of your car, but what was the range that they were sort of sitting at in 2020?
For a Boxster?
Yeah, for a Boxster.
Approaching the 100,000 mile mark, you could get them $8,000-$9,000. I saw a few for maybe 7,500, but those were in the 99s or maybe some automatics as well.
Okay, so you've got this local ad. What do you do then?
Yeah, so I reached out to the guy and I sent him a message and I went on Kelley Blue Book and I typed in the information about his car and I said, hey, this checks out at this price here. And I took a screenshot of it and you're listing it for this price, which is a bit more. I'm interested in checking it out, but can you talk to me a little bit about the price? And he responded pretty quickly. And I think he knew that I was a decently serious buyer to at least, do the legwork of kind of scoping that out for him. And he said, yeah, well, Kelley Blue Book lags behind a little bit on what these actually sell for, and I've lowered this from a higher price and this is kind of where I want to be. But, I'm happy for you to come over and, check it out in person and we can talk more about it then. Okay.
So you went over and checked it out?
Yeah. Yep. So my wife and I, took the reliable Civic over to his house and pulled up, to his house, and he lives in a nice area of town, and pull up, and it's a pretty big house that it's like, oh yeah, this guy would own a Porsche or two, kind of vibe. And he came out and was like the nicest guy in the world and said, here's the car. Have you ever driven one of these before? And I said, no, I don't even know if I've ever been this close to one before. And so instead of being like real turned off, like, oh God, this guy, he was really, really cool. And he basically took me around the car. He showed me some of the imperfections on it. He popped the front trunk for me. He did everything. He showed me how to put the hood down, how to deal with the car, where the keys go in, all that fun stuff. And he gave me a quick crash course and basically just threw me the keys and said, if you head out of my neighborhood and go down to the right, there's about, a pretty long stretch of road there with a roundabout. Why don't you check it out, come back and tell me what you think.
Oh, that's very cool. It's very cool. Was he the original owner, or he'd only owned it for a few years?
I think he only owned it for a few years. I didn't get like a Carfax with that. Actually, I know he was not the original owner because the documentation for this car, which I ended up purchasing, only covered his ownership, which was 2016 through when I bought it in 2020.
Okay, so you took it for a ride. You took it for a drive with your wife?
With my wife, yeah.
And so what did you think? What were the first impressions?
Well, first impressions, Michael, when I sat down, the seat was in perfect position for me. And, that was a good sign off.
Exactly.
I had to back out of his driveway, which, had a little bit of an incline, and I hadn't driven stick in a number of years. And I'm like, oh geez, like I'm going to have to back this out, not bottom it out and not kill it. All of this guy watches me, in his car. So it's pretty stressful, but I absolutely nailed it, and got on the road. And, with the top down and the windows down, Michael, honestly, within the first 20 seconds of driving the car, I smiled as much as I've smiled, I had the most fun. I absolutely loved it. My wife, is very risk averse, and, she could see how happy I was, and, she was kind of fighting back a smile as well. And honestly, I think we both knew within, 20 seconds that this was a must buy.
Okay. So you go back to the guy, nice guy. Do you start to negotiate down, or are you happy with the price?
Yeah, I come back and, I know that some of these people talk about, playing it close to the chest and everything. I couldn't wipe the smile off my face, Michael. It was like, I was just having such a blast. And, I came back and I said, wow, that was great. And, he said, well, what do you think? And I said, well, I think it's great. I shot you, what I saw in Kelley Blue Book. And, you kind of talked a little bit that you were happy where you were, but is there anything that we can do on price? And he said, let me talk to my wife. I can maybe knock a little bit off because, you remind me of me. He said, so basically, I was younger. I think I was 30 at the time. It was going to be my first sports car. And, he was nice enough to use that life situation, I guess, for me to cut me a bit of a break on the price.
Oh, that's good. So we haven't really introduced the car. Tell the listeners, before we get into the inspection side of it, tell the listeners exactly what you found. And we know you're going to buy this car, but tell the listeners exactly what you found and what the options were and anything that had been changed on the car when you purchased it, when you looked at it.
Yep. So this was a 2001 Porsche 986 Boxster base model 5-speed. It's in the lapis blue color which is just beautiful in the sun and in the shade. Yeah, I love a blue car.
Yeah.
Especially with that metallic hue. I think it's great. Black leather seats, and it didn't really have that many options. It just had like the 3-spoke steering wheel. It had 17-inch turbo twist wheels, and that was honestly about it. So it was a little bit of a bare bones Boxster, but with just looking out the window, and having that view and having that noise behind you and the fun coming in through the top, like it had everything that it needed from me, especially as an introductory car.
And it was pretty stock then? There was no modifications to it? It wasn't one of these boxes that someone had tried to make something more out of it?
No, absolutely not. It was basically completely stock. And that really is how I like my cars. I think the engineers do such a great job with the design that, who am I to say, hey, I want this done differently?
Yeah, it's true. It's true. And what about what was the mileage, Tyler?
Mileage was 101,400 at the time.
101,400 to the European listeners, 160,000 kilometers. So it's not crazy mileage, is it? It's not crazy mileage for a car, a 2001.
Yeah, I didn't think so.
So the 2001 Boxster, so what engine is that? It's not the 2.5, is it? 2.7, right?
It is 2.7, correct.
2.7. So we all know, the elephant in the room. We always talk about it. I've got a 997. It's always there. The IMS issue with the Boxsters and the 997s. Do you think you need to do an inspection on this car? Or do you just trust the buyer, the price is good, and you will deal with whatever you have to deal with once it's in your ownership?
Yeah, so this went from an idea in my head of like, hey, I might be interested in a Porsche to like literally within a week being like, hey, I'm probably buying this. So I really dove into the forums and YouTube videos and all this stuff to see, what everybody is saying and what everybody's thoughts are. And I really came to the conclusion, Michael, that, this car has 100,000 miles on it. It appears to have been well maintained. I am, in a way buying the seller, and I absolutely, trusted that everything this guy said was honest. Yep. He showed me like literally every single imperfection that even some now I like am surprised to see if like they just happen to catch my eye. So I had a really, really good vibe with him. I really liked the way that he dealt with me in terms of being like, I have nothing to hide. Here are the keys. And so the plan was I was not going to do a pre-purchase inspection.
Okay.
So feel free to collect yourself. But I did get a little bit of cold feet.
No, I think,
and I was like, you know what?
Yeah, I can understand. So he literally, so let's just go back to that, Tyler. So he's a really good seller, right? Genuine sort of guy. So he goes through all the imperfections. So he shows you everything that's wrong with the car, which a lot of sellers won't do because they just make you see it. And when you're excited, you go and look for a car, you do miss things, right? That's why they always say, don't just buy it on the first look, go back again and look at it the second time and you'll see something that you missed the first time. Even with my car, I looked at it, I think twice, but I got a PPI done on my car when I had it done, but that was from a dealer. So you can't always trust the dealer. So what about all the manuals and all the service history and everything? Did he show you all that? That was all laid out as well? There was plenty of receipts and records of what had been done?
Yeah, so he did have that stuff available. And I did come to him with a few questions of like looking at the service intervals online and everything like that. And I asked if certain things had or had not been done. And basically he was like, hey man, this really is like a turnkey. You can drive it until the end of the season. You probably got about 2,000 or so miles left on the oil. I bought it in September. So, living in Minnesota, we kind of got to put it away, at the end of October, maybe. So yeah, he was like that. He was willing to go through those things, but I didn't even really have those questions that much. Just kind of based on what we had talked about and the working order of the car, like literally like the time that I got it from first gear to second gear, I was like, wow, this is the best car that I've ever driven. And it's not even close. Yeah.
Good to be in the stick again. So, okay. So what do you do? You've made the decision. You're in his driveway. He's gone through the car. So you wait a few days and then you purchase it, or you literally purchase it on the spot? You give him a deposit. How does it work?
Yeah. So he said, he needed to talk to his wife about, the discount that he was going to give. And I had to talk to my wife about spending near the top end of the budget. So we kind of had a tentative agreement of what next steps would look like. And I went home and, he stayed home and, we connected the next day and he said, hey, this price that we talked about is good. And I said, yeah, let's do it. And in the meantime, I did. So I was saying I was willing to forego the PPI, but, in reading all of the forums, everybody was like, dude, you basically have to do it. Like you have to do it. So, I called him back and I said, hey, I've lined up a PPI at this location. My plan was that my father-in-law, who's a bit of a car guy, but not a Porsche guy, would, come and look it over with me before we actually exchanged money. Right. But instead I just thought, hey, you know what? Let's just have the professionals take a look at this. And, he said, I welcome any PPI. I have nothing to hide. And he was gracious enough to bring it over to that place, which, the PPI came back, everything was looking good. So absolutely checked out.
So you did do a PPI?
I did. Yeah. I changed my mind and I decided that a PPI.
So what was the crazy, we always talk about the crazy PPI list where there's a lot of things on it that don't really mean anything. Was there anything on there that surprised you?
There was a little bit, so the passenger side, like drop down sun visor was missing not the mirror, but the thing that covered the mirror, that plastic piece.
Oh, right. Yeah.
And that was, so he actually still had the piece and, but that was like, I think it was like $200, the shop said to fix that. I'm like, are you kidding me? I'm not going to fix that. You know what I mean? But, the only thing was they identified that the engine had a bit of a leak starting of a little bit of oil around one of the gasket seals or something like that, which they said this is something that, is very minor. The seller said he had never experienced any drippage on the floor or, any excessive consumption. And I said, I'm glad that the PPI uncovered this just so I wouldn't be surprised at any point down the road. But, I was very comfortable with the status of that imperfection, and I have not addressed it, and it has not been an issue for me at all during my ownership.
So it's pretty good though, right? It's a car, it's 100,000 miles. It's a well-driven Boxster, and it's pretty clean and a reasonable good price, right? You said slightly top end, but a reasonable good price. What about the things like the, when you got the PPI done, what about the top? The top is always a bit of an issue where people have issues with the top braking, the back window, except I watched something online yesterday where someone was cleaning the rear of actually it was a guy that does ice cleaning on cars and he was doing a Porsche and he was doing the back window on a convertible and it was completely cloudy and they just buffed it up and it was completely clear. I didn't realize you could fix it so easily. How was the plastic window and the top on the Boxster? Because they're quite expensive to fix.
Yeah, they are. This Boxster, perfect. The
That's good.
top went up and down absolutely the way that it needed to. There is a little crease on maybe the driver's side window that has a hole maybe the size of your pinky fingernail, kind of very immaterial to me, but that was really the only issue with the top.
Okay, so you transferred the money, you go back and pick up the car. It's still good weather. You still got the good weather in Minneapolis. It's still reasonable driving weather. Where did you go? Did you go straight home or did you take it for a spin?
Yeah, first, before we get to that point, Michael, I just want to tell you, I ended up buying it over a holiday weekend.
Oh, okay.
And I told this guy, that I said, hey, I'll be there at like 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock, I forget. But I had to stop at the bank first to extract the money. And the line for the 4 rows of ATMs was like literally out to the parking lot. So I'm like, oh my God, dude, like, are you serious? So my wife and I had to wait in line for an hour. So the time we were supposed to be there was the time we actually got the money out of the bank. So I had to message him and I was like, he's going to probably think I'm flaking like last second. You know what I mean? But, we waited in line, we got the money, they gave us an envelope and everything. And I basically walked up to him, I said, here's the envelope and the receipt. You can go count it and everything. That's all there. And, I said, hey, but before I take it, do you mind just taking me on a drive and showing me, kind of how you drive in terms of like where you keep the RPMs and things like that. So we did that. His wife was inside counting the money. He took me for a little 10-minute drive to go over those things with me. And then, he gave me, the 3 sets of keys and all the history that he had. And I was on my way.
That's a really good thing to do. No one's ever sort of said that before, I don't think, that they've done that. That's actually a really good thing to do. It's a good thing to do for the person selling it as well, where they're giving away the car too. It's like their last drive in their car. You know what I mean? If there is any sort of attraction to the car or emotional attachment to the car. And you get to know how he drives it. And that's a really good thing to do. Good thought.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I just wanted to be careful with it, this was something that at the time was a good amount of money for me to just be spending on something for fun, definitely did not need it. So I just wanted to make sure that I was going to keep it in the shape that I was inheriting it in and enjoy it. So I took it over to my friend's house. He lived about 20 minutes away from that guy and, said, hey, look what I got. Like, let's jump on the highway and, take it around and see how it all goes. And, from there, then I went home and, had my wife's family over the next day. And, we Googled and ogled over it. We're like, look how cool this is and all that stuff. So,
so you get it home, you've got your first Porsche. The first drive though, you took it out for a drive with him, people looking at your car, they're coming over to look at it. How was it for you though, when you went out in the car for the first time and drove it yourself and just realized, it just sort of sunk in that, hey, I've got my first Porsche?
Yeah, it felt great. It felt like I've owned the car forever. Like I mentioned, backing out of his driveway, that car is like second nature to me. I feel so confident and comfortable in doing anything in it. I just felt like I owned it for 100 years on my first drive. And, I've just loved getting to drive it and experience it, as much as I can.
Fantastic. All right. So you get the car. And I always ask this question, do you think, okay, it's perfect, there's a good service, there's a good history of it, it's the guy who sold it to you said there's not much you have to do to it, you can just drive it, until the winter comes. Do you still think, hey, I want to take it to a Porsche specialist or a Porsche dealer and get it checked over and get anything fixed that has to be fixed, or you just leave it until the winter?
Yeah, my thoughts were I was just going to leave it pretty much until the winter. To winterize it, I'd get an oil change beforehand. And, I went back and I looked through the service history specifics that he shared with me. And, I ended up doing something like I flushed some fluids and did some extra things that, maybe did not need to be done, but according to the book, were due. So I did take it in when I winterized it and just knocked out several other things just to have it as perfect as I could possibly have it.
So anything major that you had to do?
No, but unfortunately I did have a couple major things this season that, had to come due just kind of from age. I did have to replace a water pump.
The water pump.
And stuff like that.
The thing I'm starting to really worry about this water pump issue. You heard about, so Steve's car, his GT3, his water pump failed the other week and he had to get it fixed. And the water pump is a really weak area on 997, 996s. I don't believe mine has been done. as you know, I've got an '06 997. I don't believe my water pump has been done. Apparently, there's very little indication if it is going to go, which I find surprising. I thought they could have actually, when they're doing the service, that they look at your car, you could actually see it. Because it's quite a big, I don't know how much yours costs, but I know for Steve, it's quite a lot of money to get it fixed, to get it rectified. It's something you have to be aware of. And I know that when people buy 996s, 997s, or even Boxsters, it's always about, has the IMS been done? If it needs to be done, if it's a pre-05 or whatever for a 997, not an '06. Has the water pump been done? Has the clutch been changed? So with yours, was there any IMS solution on your car, or was it just standard?
It was just standard. And that was something that I felt comfortable with, getting in at the price point that I was getting in. I felt like I could take that risk and be comfortable. And if it went, unfortunately, that's just how it goes sometimes. And the water pump was not done before, and that was like $1,000 for my car. I don't know if you mentioned how much Steve's was.
Yeah. No, I didn't, but that's a lot cheaper.
But
yeah. And what about the clutch? What about the clutch? Because you've got 100,000 miles on your car, on the Boxster. How was the clutch feel? Was it all okay?
Yeah, clutch felt great. I don't have any documentation of when it was replaced. I assume it's not on the original. It's up to about 110,000 miles now and still going real strong.
Fantastic. So you've got this car. You've got it in a great color. Lapis blue, I think, it's almost reminiscent of a 993 color. I always think of this 993 color when I think of that blue. It's not purpley blue, is it though? But it's got a really nice shine in the light. It's a really beautiful color. And sometimes an overlooked color as well, like not a color that everyone sort of thinks about. You know what I mean? There's always sapphire and there's always midnight, but lapis is not always on everyone's sort of list of great blues. But I think it really is a great blue. So you've got your Boxster. This is 2020. You bought it. You're enjoying it. You're driving it. What happens next? You still got the Civic. You've still got the family car. So you change that out.
Yep. No, not yet. So we still have the Civic. And I'm driving the Boxster, and I like taking it and my wife, going for drives together. And we also have a dog, his name's Hobbs, and we like taking him to parks and doing walks and stuff like this. And it's like, hey, we can go to all these great national parks, which usually have twisty roads and other fun driving activities nearby. And this is all stuff that Hobbs would love to do, but we got to leave him at home because there's not, any room in the car for him. So, I felt really sad that we were leaving that opportunity on the table, when a 911 is just sitting there with the back seat, perfect for a dog, or maybe a small child. So, that kind of started my thinking around that. And, I started talking to my wife like, hey, the Civic's great and it's really reliable and everything, but like driving, it's really boring and we're not going to want to take this and do trips. And, we can't fit Hobbs in the Boxster. So like, a 911 is really looking more and more appealing, and that's how that conversation started.
So when did this start, Tyler? Was this last year?
When did this start?
So 2020, you buy the Boxster, and then you already got the itch. You've already got the itch for another Porsche, which happens to all of us.
Yes. Yeah. That did happen then in 2021.
2021.
That I started to get that itch. Yeah. And started to talk about it. And, are you familiar with the Millennium Edition 996, Michael?
Yes, I am. Yep.
Okay. So one of those caught my eye and I absolutely fell in love with the color and the uniqueness of the interior. I don't know why. I just absolutely love wood grain. And I just thought it was an awesome car. And I started talking to some people, and there's like a Millennium Edition registry forum. And I found one, and I was like begging my wife. I'm like, please, 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 can I get this? And she's like, oh, I don't know. You already have the one. We have the family car. Da 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 da. And so, we ultimately decided that between shipping it over here, this one was in California and stuff like that, that it was just too much money, basically.
Sorry, Tyler, what is the interior of the Millennium Edition again? Is it like a tan color? I'm trying to remember the interior. It's an unusual interior, right?
It is, yeah. I think it's called like natural brown.
That's right.
Or something like that. Yeah. And actually, there was a shop in Wisconsin.
Sorry, it looks like the Carrera GT interior. It looks like that same brown that the Carrera GT has, which they have a word for, and I can't think of it. It's like saddle brown color. It almost looks like the same color. Mm-hmm. That's why, I remember now. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. No, and so I'm still, and I know that you've talked about this with other people. I look at car gurus every single day, like every single day. I'm not even in the market. I just like to look and see what prices are and like, ooh, would I have wanted that one? Or wow, what a good deal that one and stuff like that. But we came across one in Wisconsin where I'm from. That was like 20 minutes away from my parents' house. And I said, well, let's go home and visit my parents. And then let's also check out this car, because my wife was adamant that she did not like the interior of the Millennium Edition, where I thought it was very cool.
Yep.
So we went there, we got to sit in it, and, she kept calling it baby poop brown. And I was like, this did not go the way I was hoping. I thought when she saw it in person, she was going to think it was pretty cool. So she basically totally squashed that. And we decided that, the Millennium Edition wasn't really worth selling the Civic for at that time.
What is the Millennium Edition 996? The exterior color is unusual as well, isn't it? Does it only come in one color?
Yes. Yeah. It's a beautiful, I don't know how to pronounce it. I've only read it, but it's like violet chroma flare or something like that.
Oh, it's a chroma flare color. Yes. Okay. So your wife didn't like the color of the interior. So what do you do then? Do you leave it? Do you stop looking for 911s, or do you start looking for something else?
Yeah, well, I was really drawn to that paint color, that violet chroma flare, which, transfers from like a deep purple to a light purple to olive green to black and everything in between. And it's just beautiful. And I was pretty bummed out that we couldn't come to an agreement on what was right for our family with that. So I left it alone. But, as you know, Michael, the prices for used cars, and especially Porsche, have been just going up and up and up. And, I just felt like, hey, we can wait till next year, and prices are probably going to be more, and the mileage is probably going to be higher, and all that. So I really felt like, I wanted to get into a 911, and specifically a Millennium Edition if I could, because the 996 and 997 price point difference, was what it was. And I basically wouldn't shut up about this Millennium Edition. I would show my wife pictures like every week, like, oh, look at this one. Like, isn't that cool? But we ended up going to this really awesome parade in Roseville, Minnesota. That is basically the PCA guys all get together and they put their cars in a parking lot and have like a viewing for about maybe 4 hours or so where the public can come in. And so I took my car, my Boxster there, and my wife, and I said, I really want to go and take a look at them. And so we did that, and, we appreciate all the different models and makes and everything. But, as we're walking around, I kind of started to feel like, hey, the 996 is very similar to the Boxster in a lot of ways. And if we were going to start to move into a 911, maybe we would want something with a little bit more differential. And both of us were really drawn to like the 2006, 2007 997. So, we really like the shape of the headlights. I love the size. I think it's the perfect size. And so we walked around there, and I said, well, these are beautiful. We both really, really like the 997. The price difference from a nice 996, like we had been looking at, to, a little bit higher mileage 997, the gap isn't crazy.
Yeah.
And so she really agreed that like the 996 wasn't, what she wants. And I would not make a financial purchase of this magnitude, without complete, buy-in from my significant other. So, basically that not working for her kind of meant it didn't really work for me either, but the 997 definitely did. And so she kind of nudged me in that direction.
I think it's a good point though. I mean, the 986 Boxster, the 996, very similar. You know what I mean? Very similar inside, very, very similar. It's like the 987 Boxster looks like the 997, a bit more inside. They share the same sort of parts. So it kind of makes sense. So what do you start looking for then? Do you start looking for a Carrera? Do you start looking for a Carrera S, 4S, or was the Carrera originally where you started at?
Yeah, so Carrera is where I started at. That's where I wanted to be, just from, number one, the price point. Number two, from what I understand online, is the 3.6 liter engine is less subject to bore scoring than, the 3.8 in the S. So similar to my thoughts on the Boxster, this is something I want to maintain and keep and enjoy. Yeah. So if I can lower the risk that way, that was a big positive for me.
Yep.
And, I didn't really want like the sport mode and all that stuff. Like I kind of just wanted it to be like an old car where my right foot is the sport mode. If I'm putting it down, we're going. And if I'm not, we're not.
Yeah. And I think, what you just said is the reason when I bought my car 5 years ago. It was a similar reason. I started looking at S's, right? And there were not many available. The price, and I've said this before in other podcasts, but the price was quite a lot more money, $20,000, $25,000 more. But then I started reading, like what you just said. I started reading about that, the problems with the engine. And the S's that were cheap were the 04s, the very first 04s, 05s, late 04s, 05s, or whatever, 05, 04 build year. And apparently they're the ones that can have a lot of issues with IMS bore scoring in that S engine. So that was the reason why I kind of decided, well, I think I'm just going to get a Carrera. I'll just get the base. It's got the bigger IMS. It doesn't need any sort of, it's reasonably safe. And then, just hope it's going to be okay in the future. So it's kind of the same way you were thinking as well, a little bit. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, 100%. Totally agree with everything that you said. And yeah, I made basically a set list of the options that I felt like were things that I wanted. And, of course, manual, because this was a fun car. I've been fortunate enough to work from home. So commuting into the office and dealing with traffic, is not an issue. So Definitely wanted a manual. Definitely wanted to buy xenon headlights. I think that's awesome. I love the sand beige interior. So I wanted that. And then I was also interested in heated seats and a sunroof. So those were really the things that were like must have, as well as the Bose system, I should say. I did want the premium sound. Like, would full leather have been nice? Yeah, absolutely. But, that wasn't like a make or break.
So when you're searching, did you find all those things?
As a matter of fact, I did, Michael.
You did? You found all of them?
I did. Every single thing, yeah. And it was, at the time, it had... So the prices back when I bought were similar to now. I mean, things were a little bit different, but I think if someone was looking to get my Boxster now, they would probably have a top end budget of 10.5 US dollars. Yeah. And, for the 997, probably at least 40, maybe closer to 41, 42,000. But, things were a little bit cheaper back then, thankfully for me and everybody else that bought at that time, but they were still way higher than they used to be. I went back and looked at Bring a Trailer from like 2018. And I'm like sitting in my room being like, are you serious, dude? You could have bought that. And my wife's like, stop looking at cars from, 4 years ago. It's not going to happen.
But aren't 997s tipping close to 60,000 in the US now? Or did I see that wrong?
No, they are. But I was looking more at like the 100,000 mile mark, as close to under that as I could be. But yeah, I mean, definitely if you're looking at, 50,000 miles, probably $50,000, maybe a little more. Right. And certainly can go up from there.
Okay. So you want all these options. I'm interested because sand beige, I have a bigger appreciation of beige leather interiors, tan leather interiors, and even red leather interiors, which I don't usually like, from being in the Middle East, because a lot of the cars there are all spec'd with those interiors. And I kind of like, even though mine's black, it really is nice to have a bit of contrast in your interior. It really does make it look... It makes it look more expensive. You know what I mean? It really does. The black sometimes looks a little bit, I hate to say it, people are going to hate me for this, but it does look a little bit cheap sometimes. So to find a sand beige one, I think is quite hard as well, but to find all these options. So how did you find it? Was it online or was it a local seller?
No, this one was online. And like I said, I look every day. And I saw one and it came up on Car Gurus. Okay. And at the time it was listed for $2,000 more than my budget. Right. And I said, hey, you know what? That is within, a deviation factor that I think this seller might, be willing to compromise a little bit. Yeah. Yeah. So got on the phone with him. I said, hey, I see this. I'm basically prepared to buy it. I'm very interested. But
can't be too enthusiastic.
Yeah, I'm a very honest guy. Like,
sound like me. I'll take it.
Take it. Yeah. I'm like, just don't raise the price anymore. Right. Yeah. No, but I called him and I basically said, hey, I see this. I'm very interested, but the hurdle for me is this price, unfortunately, is a little bit higher than I'm comfortable with. What do you think of this price? And he said, you know what? I haven't thought about going that low, but I can meet you halfway and I can give you 1,000 off. And I said, okay, cool. Let me talk to my wife, but that sounds pretty reasonable to me. Yeah. Especially with, this was one of the few ones that was in my price range, that not even that had all the options I wanted, but just was like in this price range period. So, we talked about it, my wife and I, and she said, $1,000 is basically close enough. You can go for it. So, texted this guy. He's actually in Brentwood, Tennessee at Niche Motors. Right. His name is Evan Lomas. If any of our listeners are thinking of dealing with them. I had a beautiful experience. I mean, super helpful, super nice. But when I was texting and calling with him, he was closing on his house. So I obviously didn't want to overstep. He has more important things than selling this car to me. Yeah. But, I texted him on maybe a Saturday and I didn't hear from him until like Monday. I'm like, oh no, he probably sold it. This is such a great deal. I bet somebody walked on the lot and was ready to scoop it up, and I don't want to bother him and be so needy to check in on it. But, he was just going through a lot in terms of the closing and stuff like that. And when he did get back to me that following Monday, we were able to, hash out a bunch of the questions that I had and have a thoughtful conversation about it, and basically come to an agreement on me purchasing the car.
Okay. So what do you do then? How do you get the car back home?
Yeah. So again, this guy, he was great. He told me that he worked for Porsche for a number of years. I actually just looked him up on LinkedIn, and he did, because he told me this car is in beautiful shape. He said for all the miles, it's been so well maintained. It did have a replacement head unit in it as well. So I can do the Apple CarPlay, which was a really big plus, because that's something that I would have wanted to, address. And,
did they give you the original one? Did you get the original one or not?
No, I did not. So that is like the missing stock piece. That's like the one difference, I guess, from factory. But because he's a dealer, he had a bunch of experience and a bunch of connections, and was so easy to work with someone who is a novice like me. I never had bought a car out of state before, much less one that I had not seen. Yeah. And, was just relying on the pictures, and I did not get a PPI on this one, Michael. I felt so comfortable with this guy, Evan, and his company, and the time that he was willing to spend with me, and like anything that I needed, he was there for, and I just trusted him.
So I'm not sure how it works in the US with this, but is there any type of warranty on cars that old from dealers or not?
I don't think so. They may offer them, but this was an as-is sale, and it was clear in the contract, that he sent over that there was no warranty. I didn't look into any aftermarket type warranty, and kind of took a leap of faith, I guess.
So you really trusted this guy then? You really trusted this dealer?
I did. And I still do. I left him a real long review if anybody wants to search Niche Motors. And Tyler, I wrote, I don't know, like a page long thing of saying, here was my experience, and all that stuff.
So all the listeners I know that want me to ask this. So when the car arrived, was it as you expected? Was everything as expected, or were there some surprises? Because no PPI, you trusted the dealer. You said you gave the dealer a great review, so everything must have been pretty in shape. But was there anything that surprised you when the car arrived?
A little bit, Michael.
Oh yeah,
okay. A little bit, yeah. So when the car came off the trailer, I have a little bit similar to the guy I bought the car from. A little bit of an incline, from my driveway to the to the road, and so the guy backs it off the truck and everything, and I'm looking at it, and I'm smiling just like when I'm driving my Boxster, super happy. And I don't think I mentioned it, but this is a black 997.1 year 2007.
Yep, we're going to get into that. Yep, I haven't. Yep.
Okay. And the gentleman who delivered it, he's pulling into my driveway kind of straight on, and I have to take the Boxster at like a 45-degree angle to not hit it. But I'm like, okay, I've never driven a 911. I've never driven a 911 before, period, Michael. So this was like me relying on my feelings of Porsche and the Boxster, and just wanting those extra two seats, to get into this car, and just nails the car like straight on. I'm like, oh my God, like what really? The heck? So he backed it out. Yeah. And I mean, it was an honest mistake and everything, but I'm like, hey dude, like you got to take this like way different angle. And so he drops it off, everything.
Was it damaged badly?
No, I'm maybe being a little bit dramatic. He was going real slow.
There. Yeah.
Yeah. Like under the front lip, it hit a point where it was not going to go up.
Let's go back though. Let's just introduce the car, because like you said, we haven't really told the listeners exactly what you bought. Tell the listeners exactly what you bought, and you said you got all the mods you wanted. So let's just tell them the mods again, and anything else that was on the car that you didn't really want.
Yeah. So I got the 2007 911 base Carrera, bi-xenon headlights in sand beige with heated seats, a sunroof. I had the 19-inch turbo wheels with the colored crest, which I really like the colored crest. I didn't realize how much I appreciate that, but in comparing it with the Boxster, which just has like the black Porsche logo, I really do like that color pop.
Makes a big difference. I've got them as well. Big difference.
Absolutely. Yeah, I love it. And then the head unit, for the stereo system had been replaced to be CarPlay. And I think that's pretty much it. There were a couple of other things, with the Bose and stuff like that, but nothing else real major.
But a really good service history, right? You said it has a good service history.
Yeah, one that I was comfortable with. It did. So I called this shop just because I didn't totally understand how this like IMS RMS situation works in the 997. I think the 05 is more like the 996 where you can do the LN replacement, something like that. Whereas the 997 from I think 2006 to 2008 is like non-serviceable, but there was documentation that like the RMS was dealt with. And I was like, well, what does this mean? Because I thought you can't do that. So I called the shop and they explained it to me and said, essentially the seal was leaking oil. So the seal was like pulled and I don't really know what they did, but essentially this fixes it. So I felt like, that problem had been resolved under prior ownership. And I was really happy to see that and hear that in the prior ownership documentation.
So what about the clutch on this car? I always like talking about the clutch as well. How about the clutch? Had a good feel about it? It wasn't slipping. There was no shuddering.
Yeah, it was perfect, Michael. And it still is perfect. I've been driving it and at some point I'll probably want to talk to you about the differences between the two, but not really just yet. But when I first took my first drive in the 997, it's a lot heavier car than the Boxster. And I feel like, the rear engine placement is very noticeable compared to the mid-engine location of the Boxster.
Okay.
And it took a lot of getting used to.
Sorry, I'll interrupt. This is something I'm interested in. And I'm interested in this because I've had this from a couple of recent owner stories as well. I think, man, my memory's so bad. Amanda mentioned it, I think. Do you feel like you drive differently in the Boxster to the 997? You just said it kind of like, because you got the rear engine. People who are listening to the podcast, some people have Porsches, some people are looking to buy a Porsche, right? So these sort of episodes kind of help new buyers to sort of decide, do I want a Boxster or do I want a 911, right? And sometimes it just comes down to budget, but sometimes it comes down to driver feel, right? So you've got a rear engine 911. I haven't hid my feelings on how much I love it. You feel the weight transfer, you feel it in the corner. But to drive a Boxster, and I've only been a passenger in Boxsters, I've never driven a Boxster. Do you have to change the way you drive because of that mid-engine?
I think so, yes. To me, I think the Boxster, the way I would describe it is it's carefree and it's fun. It is just a fun car. I am so comfortable in it. I can, just bang, 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 go through the gears, don't have to think about anything. I can accelerate, I feel like, at any point into any corner and, feel very comfortable, that the car is going to perform what I'm expecting. The 911 is a bit more of a rewarding and I don't know, just kind of different level of satisfaction for your driving. Like you mentioned, kind of the weight distribution and the transfer that you can feel. So I feel like for me, I have to think more when I'm driving the 911. And I had never driven a 6-speed before. Right. So when I first was bringing it out of the driveway, I put it in first gear and I pulled forward. And I was like, what the heck? And I put it in first gear again and I pulled forward. I didn't know you had to pull it all the way over, and go up to get to reverse. So it took me 3 tries to actually end up in reverse.
We've all done that.
But yeah, with the Boxster, with the Boxster though, with only being 5 gears, it's pretty obvious which gear you should be in to do the things that you want. And to me, you kind of have more decision-making to go through within the 911 to decide, do I want to be in second gear or is third gear the right move for this? That type of stuff. So I would say that I definitely drive differently, just in terms of the way that I approach turns and accelerate out of them.
Yeah, I think Amanda said that in Owner Stories number 72. I think she said you can brake in her Spider. She's obviously got the 2022 Spider, but you can brake a lot later. You know what I mean? In the mid-engine, she found you can brake a lot later than you do in the 911. You brake differently, I guess.
I would agree. I mean, I feel like for me, I feel like I can accelerate into any turn at being a little bit dramatic, at any speed in the Boxster. Whereas in the 911, I feel like, hey, I need to be careful to hit this at the right point and, not lose control or doing I feel like I have ultimate control in the Boxster, whereas I feel like I'm still learning or have to think more in the 911.
So Tyler, in 2020, beginning January 1st, 2020, you didn't have any Porsches. Then you get a Boxster. Now you got a 997. As I said before we started recording and probably at the beginning, for me, the perfect combination, I think, for money-wise, for value for money and experience, I think if anyone wants to get two Porsches, like a 986, whether it be a 2.5 or a 2.7, like yours in manual, and a 997 or a 996, you know what I mean? For me, it's more than 997. Mm-hmm. A 997 Carrera, I think that's a great two-car garage. You must be really happy with what you have now. So obviously the Civic's gone, right? That's it. It's finished.
Yeah, the Civic, due to the car market, I actually was able to get more than I paid for it, brand new. So that was really nice to making the 911 purchase a lot easier.
Yeah. So are you intending to do anything to the 997? We didn't talk about exhaust. I always like to talk about the exhaust and about the exhaust sound and everything like that. Are you intending on changing anything? Did it come with a standard exhaust or did it come with a sports exhaust?
Yeah, standard exhaust and the oval tailpipes, which I just prefer the look of. And, Michael, I really like the exhaust as stock because I like to try to use this as a family vehicle. Of course, I'm driving it myself and I'm going to events and things like that. But the versatility of the 997 really is unmatched, where depending on what gear you're in, you can really tone that engine down. And it's not like, you don't have to talk over it too much. And so when my wife and I are, driving, it's nice to be able to keep that at a conversation pace. And it's also really nice that, if there's a turn coming up or we just want to, go a little bit faster, like you can drop it down into whatever gear and, hear it behind you and enjoy it that way.
So is the Boxster is a lot louder in the cabin, is it?
Probably, with the top down and everything. Yeah.
Oh, with the top down. All right. So what else? We always have, like you said, we always keep looking. So there's no more mods. You're not doing anything. Oh, what about your Instagram? You don't have any images on your Instagram of your cars, do you?
No, not really. I don't post that much, but if there's any listeners, I'm a financial guy. I do finance stuff. And like I said, I look at the Porsche market all the time. If you wanted to connect with me and run any ideas past me of, is this a good price or can I afford this or something like that?
So can I share your Instagram?
I'd be happy to, interact with anybody. Oh, definitely. Yeah.
Okay. So Tyler's Instagram, if you want to reach out to him when you hear this episode, it's at Tyler, what is it? Tyler TWOC. Is that right? Tyler WTWOC. I'll put the link in the description of this podcast, but just go over there and give Tyler a follow and tell him you heard his story on Owner Stories. No pictures of the car yet. Maybe that'll come in the future, huh? You'll take some photos. Maybe you should set up a separate Instagram just for your cars, Tyler.
Yeah, maybe something like that. Yeah, I was going to say that if anybody wants to follow me, it probably won't be for me posting any images or anything like that. But happy to have any conversations if people want.
So you organize finance for cars?
No, I do it for clinical trials.
Oh, okay.
But
okay.
I went to school for accounting, and I manage my household's money and stuff like that.
Yep.
Yeah.
So. We're always looking for Porsches. I always like to ask this question in the newer episodes of the Owner Stories, but a perfect 3-car garage or a perfect 2-car Porsche garage. No limit. Money's no object. What is something you'd have in it? 2 or 3 cars?
Yeah. Michael, the 997 is my favorite Porsche of the whole range. Maybe I would want to get up into like a 2011 just to have something with the more reliable engine and the more horsepower, so that would be a bit exciting. But I would maybe want to go with like a 997 GTS. I think that would be great. A 997 C4S. And honestly, I would keep a 986 Boxster. I really, really like them. It's a lot of fun, and it's just a pure driving experience. There is no bells and whistles to it. Like it has a CD player, and that's really the extent of the technology.
And it's light. It's reasonably light too, isn't it?
Yeah, super light.
That's interesting. It's interesting that your cars, you've chosen. You haven't chosen all the 911Rs or the Carrera GTs. You've stuck to the driver's cars, the cars you can drive every day. I keep coming back. I think that I'm stupid in a way that I haven't actually bought a Boxster because the prices are going up very quickly, aren't they? They're going up very quickly in Australia. I know they're, for a reasonable one now, they're about 40,000 Australian. So what's that? 30 odd thousand US. They're going up in price. They're a great car. It's something that, it's been overlooked for a while, hasn't it, the Boxster? People are starting to get into them now. It's a bit like 944s and 968s and the transaxles as well. But the Boxster sort of is more higher up the list for a lot of people. And I think if you are listening and, even after hearing Tyler's story, if you're looking, don't you think, Tyler, if you're looking for a 986, don't hesitate. Just go and buy one because And I think even the 2.5 or the 2.7 is fine. If you can stretch to an S, get an S. But there's nothing wrong with the base ones. That's for sure.
Yeah, not at all. For me, and like we kind of talked about in my car history, like I hadn't really ever driven anything so powerful. So like a 325 horsepower is plenty of power for me. Anything else, I don't even know how some of these guys can drive like turbos and stuff like that and not just be doing crazy speeds at all times.
But is there any more space in your garage though? Are you still looking? Are you looking for something else to slip in there? Like a transaxle or something,
No. My wife has a Subaru Forester, so the third stall is taken up. And unfortunately, I'm going to have to be parting ways with the Boxster due to, the new baby here. We won't be able to take trips, the wife and I can just enjoy the 911 and hopefully find somebody similar to myself that's looking to get in to a nice Porsche, at a fair price and, kind of share the wealth that way with them.
Oh, so you're going to pass it on? You're going to sell the Boxster?
Yep. Yeah. It's at the shop right now, getting the alternator taken care of. And, once that's fixed, I'll probably be posting it sometime in the next month. And it really breaks my heart, man.
You're going to miss it, right? You're going to miss it for sure.
I miss it already. I mean, I wrote a nice ad, that said, here's all the things I've done in my history and, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. And I basically put like, hey, I would like a right of refusal on this if you're ever going to move it, because I love that car. I absolutely love it. And, unfortunately, it just doesn't make sense, when we need the extra seat and, I don't want it to sit.
You've got the 997, you've got the baby seat in the 997, you've sorted all that out?
Yeah, we're working through that. It's different, tighter fit than I thought.
Oh, really?
But we're trying some different things to make sure everything is safe.
Isn't there a Porsche accessory for that? I thought Porsche had their own little thing that goes in the back. I'm sure it's expensive.
Yeah, there is, but I think it starts at like 25 pounds and my daughter's like only 8 pounds right now.
Right.
So that probably won't even be until next year or so.
Right. Wow. Selling the Boxster. Yeah, but you can always get another Boxster. You can, if the prices don't go crazy, you'll probably sell it and all of a sudden they'll double in price or something. That's usually what happens. But you've got the 997. It's a great car. Everyone knows I'm a 997 owner. I love my 997. I've got a 06, so it's a little bit young, a little bit older than yours. And it's a reliable car, isn't it? Anyone listening who doesn't have a Porsche, the 997, even the 996, the 997 is a really reliable car. Yes, you have to pay for the general maintenance, and sometimes those bills are heavy. But in general, it's very reliable, don't you think? And a fun car to drive.
100%. And one thing I would say, Michael, and this probably also factors into my thinking about selling it, is for each car, I basically budget like $1,000 of maintenance fees per year, maybe more. Yep. Whether it's the 986 Boxster or the 997. So, to have two cars, that becomes $2,000, and that's money that could be saved towards college fund or something like that. So that's part of the reason for the sale as well.
True. Tyler, we're almost at the end. We've actually spoken for over an hour. Let's talk about, you're in a great area for drives. Let's talk about your favorite drives. If someone's coming to your region, if someone's coming to Minneapolis, where would you say to take their 911, their sports car, their muscle car? Where would they drive?
Yeah, so I'm still figuring that out myself. I live a little bit north of the cities. So, like I kind of mentioned, my wife and I look into like wineries and also maybe some hiking trails. And, just going up to Elk River, I would take somebody up from where I live, which and go up to Elk River and just kind of hit up there. There's also in the Stillwater area, that's right along the St. Croix River. There's a lot of fun, twisty roads with beautiful scenery there. And the third thing, this is actually probably what I would do first, is if someone was coming to town with their Porsche, I would say, hey, you need to join the Porsches and Pancakes Minneapolis group, which is run by our buddy James. Yes, sir. Yeah, him and the moderators there, I think Chris and some other guys, they do a great job taking care of all. They basically do what you do, Michael, for setting up the podcast and bringing us all together. They do that for the drivers. They say, hey, we're going to meet at this place at this time, have breakfast, and then we're going to do this route. And those guys, the first drive that I ever did in my 997 was with them. And that was a fun drive, and that was a fast pace. And like, my wife was with me in the car too, and we're like taking a turn, and I'm like, well, the 4 cars ahead of me did it at this speed, so I think it'll be fine, so they kind of taught me the way. But I would definitely say if you could link up with those guys, they always have something fun going on.
Yeah. So that's James at Auto Amateur. People who haven't been to James's YouTube channel or his Instagram, it's just at Auto Amateur, and you'll find the details of it there. He talks about it, I think, or has links to it when it's happening. Tyler, anything else before we go? Anything else you'd like to share with the listeners?
Yeah, I'll just mention, one or two quick things. One other thing that kind of went into my purchase was, my uncle, he bought a real nice Jaguar. I think it's like an XF type. And, his wife, unfortunately, had been having some health issues and, his life changed quite a bit. Right. And so if people, are sitting on the sidelines looking at this and saying, I can afford it, but, I don't need it. I don't know. As long as you're still like living within your means and being responsible about your purchases and things like that, I would recommend to anybody at any age to just jump right in. I think if you're interested, I think you'll love it. And just kind of thinking about, you could do everything right and save all your money and, something like that could happen. And it's like, well, I probably would have rather had the driving experience or had the car experience or done this vacation. So, I would definitely recommend that. And then, like I said, I'll offer my opinion if anybody ever did want to reach out to me to just talk about these things. I've been monitoring the market like literally on a daily basis since I started getting interested in 2020 through today. So I think I have a pretty good eye of what's reasonable price and understanding all those things. So, happy to share any further experiences that I can offer or encourage or provide feedback to anyone that might be looking, to get into the Porsche world.
Fantastic. And, that's what's great about this thing that we're all into, this Porsche that we're all into, this, all of us being enthusiasts, is the community. You know what I mean? And what you just said then, reaching out to help people who are looking at buying one or thinking about buying one who aren't sure. I get so many DMs from people, so many messages from people who haven't bought one yet, who want information or should I do this, should I do that? And it's hard when you don't have a Porsche. When you first start looking, don't you think it's a bit daunting? There's a lot to sort of get to know. Mm-hmm. There's a lot to learn. And it's great, I had people who used to help me and now I guess I'm sort of passing it on and helping other people as much as I can with my limited knowledge. And I think that's what we love about the community. That's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely, Michael. And, thank you so much for doing all that you do in terms of this podcast and bringing us all together. I know it takes a lot of work and a lot of your time. So, thank you for making that happen for all of us listeners. We all really appreciate it.
No, thank you. I like I said, I enjoy the owner stories. I really do. I enjoy hearing the stories. It makes me feel like I'm buying a car every episode. You know what I mean? It makes me feel like I'm buying another Porsche. I talk about it a lot, but it's good when I can talk about other people and their journey and how they got there. So it's good. And the common thread that we all have, you know what I mean? There is such a common thread running through all these stories that, they're not all the same, but we always there's that passion, there's that journey that we all go through. And like you said, if you can afford to do it, obviously don't make yourself bankrupt, but it's worthwhile and it will make your life more, it's a fun thing to do, isn't it? It really is a fun thing to do. And it's a great car.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely agree.
All right. Tyler, thanks so much for coming on today. I think we've gone over the hour. I'm just going to let everyone know, if you want to reach out to Tyler, like he said, it's at Tyler, and I'll say it this way, Tyler, TTWOC, and I'll put that link in the description of this podcast. Tyler, thank you so much. I really appreciate you coming on today. Sorry for the cancelled one the other day, but it was all good. Thank you so much.
Yeah, Michael, that actually worked out better for me as well. I came down with a cold and I didn't want to cancel on you again. So thank you for, putting this together. I really appreciate it. And it's my pleasure to be on with you today.
That's great. Thank you so much, Tyler. Really enjoyed it. So that's Tyler coming in from Minneapolis with his 01 Lapis Blue 986 Boxster, which he's going to sell. Probably.
Probably, yeah.
Probably. And his 07 997 manual, my favorite. As you know, I have an 06 in black, both manuals. Great story. Great two-car garage. Tyler, thank you so much.
Yep, thank you, Michael.
All right, everyone. Thanks for listening to the PorscheCooled Podcast. Bye for now.